Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Ed Delia. It's great to have you join us.
Great to be with you, Rocky. Thanks for having me.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Absolutely. So, Delia Associates is coming up on a milestone year next year, actually. We're going to turn 60 in 2024. I'm not quite that old, so I'm a second generation. I grew up around the business that my dad founded in 64. And um, true to family business style, when you grow up around a family business, you just absorb bits and pieces along the way without realizing it. I had no plans to join, but then I found myself having a heart to heart with dad shortly after college. And the next thing I know, I was turning down a job to come to work for the family business in 1995. And a few years later, we started a long term buyout. He retired in 2000, and then we completed the buyout a few years after that. And the ship was mine. And Dad passed in 2012, but in those last 12 years, an invaluable advisor to me, became a true mentor figure. And he would always say, Rocky, that, hey, I don't really understand where your business is going from a technology standpoint. But the things I found myself coming to him about was advice on people and people issues. And that was an area where he truly excelled. Just a great people person, a great connector, and had many, many lifelong relationships. So to that end, an invaluable dispenser of advice.
Congratulations on 60 years. That's
Thank
a
you.
major milestone for any business and for the successful transfer from one generation to the next. That's another major milestone. And yeah, people are a big part of it. And I think that the two P's that are important are people and profits, right? If you don't make money, you can't pay the people. And if you don't know how to treat the people and develop them and lead them, then you're in this constant battle back and forth. And I think you've got to figure out how to get that right. And thankfully, there's a lot of organizations that help with that. I know you've been involved with two big organizations. As a matter of fact, one is where you met Mike Michalowicz, is EO, and you've also been part of Vistage. What was it that drew you to these organizations, and what did they help you to accomplish?
Well, I'll tell you the story of how I was first linked up with Mike Michalowicz. So I was sitting with another business owner, a fellow that owned an accounting firm. And I said, I wish there was an organization for young business owners where we could come together and talk about our issues because I'm having certain problems and challenges, and I'm sure other people are too. And he kind of looked at me and smiled and said, well, there is. It's called EO. I'm like, what? Back then it was called YEO, Young Entrepreneurs Organization. I guess we dropped the Y because we all got older. So, but nonetheless, and he said, there's this guy, Mike Michalowicz, and another guy, Paul Lewis, because at the time Mike and Paul were working together in a business, a data forensics business. And he said, yeah, they're based right in Clinton, which is one town over from or two towns over from where my company is. And talked to Mike, and he's like, yeah. Mike said, come on by. So I came by, met Mike Michalowicz. He told me all about EO, and then I met Paul Lewis, who was his partner, and I was kind of hooked. And I said, yeah, sign me up, and joined EO shortly thereafter, and actually joined in Mike's forum. So I was a forum mate with Mike for a number of years, and he is was a remarkable guy then, and he's a remarkable guy now. He's just really an amazing individual and a proven entrepreneur, and writes a great book too. So
He writes a lot of great books, and that was like he sold that data forensic
he did.
company, and he always said, he made his profit when he sold it. That's when he made his big payday. Like,
Hmm.
it paid him, and he did okay, but not as
Yeah,
well as he could have. And it was from the losing of all that money post that Profit First was born, and that kind of
yeah,
became the next round.
yeah.
So, what keeps you going back to these organizations?
So I think the thing that drew me to EO and also that later drew me into Vistage is the opportunity for peer learning. I'm of a persona that I just like to I like to learn from others. I like to hear others' experiences. That helps me formulate my own thinking. Um, it's the whole collective group think and the collective knowledge sitting around the table of other people running businesses, and it doesn't necessarily matter if they're in the exact same style or type of industry. I could learn as much from a manufacturer as I could from a service business. So the access to peer learning, I would say some of the differences in learning is that a lot of Vistage learning tends to be much more pragmatic and proven knowledge. So a lot more best practice fundamentals, whereas EO probably slants a little bit more towards what's new, what's emerging, and both are good. Both are good, and I've definitely gotten a lot out of both organizations, and met some amazing people that I would have otherwise not met.
And I know many people in both organizations, and always, I think business owners who are part of those organizations tend to be business owners who tend to step up in of their own way anyway. So it attracts a certain kind of crowd. It attracts people who want to learn, who want to improve and do better in their business. So that kind of makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Everybody's on their own respective mission, you know, and they're trying to get somewhere. And those organizations are often the catalyst to getting to the next level, whatever that next level might be.
And everyone's got to create their own path instead of trying to follow somebody else's. So let's talk a little bit about what you do. One of there were a couple of things that really popped up from just learning about you. And one of the things you said was that for a lot of business owners, their capabilities presentation is all wrong. What did you mean by that?
So that's a an area of focus for a lot of our clients. So just to put it in a context, we're a business to business branding and growth firm. So our whole approach is based on power of the brand and using a growth strategy and growth oriented marketing services to drive that brand and that growth forward for a sustainable, profitable trajectory for a B2B organization. We affectionately call our clients the brands behind the brands. So, not the name brands you'd see in the store, but usually our clients are in the supply chain of bigger brands, and that's who we service. When it comes to and that's an area where we'll often get involved with a capabilities deck or even a key prospect presentation. A lot of companies want to lead with all about them, our services, who we are, how great we are. And we often say people don't care about how much you know, they want to know about how much you care. And this style of capabilities presentation that we endorse was through my own learning and my own failing. Um, when I was early in my career, I got a really great prospect meeting, and I was really psyched. And it was um, it was a financial services company. They were launching a new division. We had just done something very similar with another company not too long ago. So I'm like, wow, we've got relevant expertise. I'm ready. I'm all psyched. So I go in and I'm showing my capabilities presentation about all our cool stuff and all the things we could do. And the um, the person that invited me in actually said, Ed, I'm going to call timeout. And he actually did one of these. 15 minutes in, Rocky, he calls timeout. He said, Ed, I don't want to waste your time or mine. I don't think we're a fit. And he cut the meeting short. And I was like devastated. It was that, I'm just like, so I'm walking out kind of with my head down. I'm like, oh, I stink and the world stinks. And I called up, I had a sales mentor. His name was Dan. I said, Dan, they chucked me after 15 minutes. And he's like, well, what happened? And then he asked a few questions. He said, did you talk about their pain? I said, well, no. And he said, well, did you address their issues or did you address what they wanted to accomplish in the call, or why you were there in the first place. I said no. And he said, well, think about that. And I did. And that's when I realized that I had our capabilities presentation all wrong and upside down. So from then on, we started to model a presentation where we lead with the key issues. What are the pains? And then we map those to how we solve those pains, specifically with case studies. And then at the very end, the very, very end, okay, here's a few points about us. And that became the model that we endorse. And that has helped some of our clients land some major league account opportunities, the likes of Home Depot, Amazon, New York Times, Google, and the like, by virtue of this style of presentation. When you lead with emotion, when you lead with specifically the emotion of pain and demonstrate how you can take away the pain, you immediately build credibility. And then, the ABCs of who you are very secondary. So that's kind of what I mean. A lot of people still roll out though and say, here's what we can do. And we do this and we do that too. And we do these 10 other things. And here's everything we've done for the last, 20 years. The prospect doesn't care. They care about, you know, their issue on the table and how well qualified and competent you are to address that. So when you do that, you're going to stay in the game, you know?
I'm laughing because our entire sales process, people have no idea what to expect when they sign up to do business with us. They have no idea. I've started to get more intentional. Oh, by the way, for the first call, this is what's going to happen because they have no idea. And I've started to even ask like 60 days out, like, is this what you expected? They're like, I had no idea because the whole time we're focusing on them and their business. And just because of our expertise, we understand their financials a lot better than they do. And we're coming to them with questions without them talking, just by looking through their data, going, what happened here? Oh, I noticed this. Why do you have that? And
Mm-hmm.
so we understand them, I think, sometimes maybe even better than they understand their own businesses. But it all goes from that. And then we're like, hey, by the way, here are cool tools. But what this really does is this. And this is how you're going to have these problems and your pain solved. And then the biggest thing I learn, and when I forget to do this, they don't always sign, is we show them how we can provide a 10x, 100x return on working with us. And we don't guarantee anything, but we make it clear. And when you present it that way, people are like, "Oh, this is a no-brainer decision." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. We did that on purpose." So, does that tie into this next question, which is what do most sales professionals get wrong when they present to the prospect for the first time? It sounds like the two of those overlap a lot.
Yeah. The I often tell biz dev personnel, especially I'll say younger ones, that it's okay to stop talking. They want to just keep talking, and they're very uncomfortable with the silence. But the point is, let the prospect speak, get them talking, and it really doesn't matter if you've got a great presentation deck to show or whatever. If you don't even get past frame one, but you've got your prospect talking about their issues and you're diving deep, you can always send that thing off later or not at all. Because once you get the prospect to open up about, why you're really there and what their issues are, now you're onto something. And then it's a question of, do you have the competency, talent, and can you demonstrate that you can solve the problem on the table? Um, and I think you brought up a great point, Rocky, is that when the other issue, I would say, and again, you see this a little bit more in some of the younger sales professionals, is consistency. You know, and I was certainly guilty of this early in my career. Every now and again, I would say, I'm just going to wing this one. Well, guess what?
You can. Honestly, I think you can wing it. But if you're going to wing it, you better have your handful of questions to uncover the pain. So I don't need to know the pain going in the door. But if I ask the right questions and I keep following up, I can uncover the pain to get to the next step.
Yeah,
But at the same point, people want to do business with people who are excited about them. And so if you don't know the business and you haven't done the research, then they're like, you don't even know who I am. Like, you're saying things that are opposite our values or not what we do. And it it's it's just hilarious. You're right. That
yeah,
does turn people off.
yeah. And even that, I mean, that is preparation. That's not winging it. I mean, you've done your homework. You've done at least a
Mhm.
baseline of homework, enough to formulate some thoughtful questions. I wouldn't call that winging it at all. I think you're coming in with a good amount of preparation. Um, it helps too. I mean, yeah, as you spend more time in an industry, I mean, you know, I've seen B2B organizations since I was, a child. I've been in and out of manufacturing facilities and distribution facilities and conference, so I've seen a lot of different go to market models and business models that it helps to get a quick orientation, once you're in a new place. And that there's one thing that I've often heard about when we win an engagement from a competitor. It's, well, they didn't really understand our business, and that's usually the number one complaint in the B2B world is you've got to understand their business and their business model. Um, and that's key.
It's funny because before we hit record, we were talking a little, and part of what you talked about, you made a comment that I'm like, oh, that's not normal. In understanding a business model, you were looking at the P&Ls month one. Most
Yeah,
people don't do that. Most business owners aren't in the numbers to understand their business model up front.
yeah. I remember the first two questions I asked my dad then when I was looking at, and it was August of it was, yeah, I think it was in August. So I was looking at the July figures of 1995. So I'm looking at this P&L, and I've never seen one before, Rocky. So I'm looking at it for the first time. I'm like trying to figure out what the heck this is. I'm like, okay, so this is sales. So this is costs of goods. Okay. And these are expenses. Okay. I get that. And so I look at the very bottom, the last number in the first column for July. I said, hey, Dad, why is this number in parentheses? He said, well, it means we lost money in July. I said, oh. I said, Dad, why is the bigger number next to it also in parentheses? And that was the year to date. He said, well, we've been losing money all year. I said, when were you going to mention this? So in
This is why I
95,
hired you, son, because I can't afford somebody.
so in 95, yeah, we were losing money. And I think by virtue of, I'm not going to take all the credit, but coming in, I think also gave Dad at the time a bit of an energy booster. And the following year, we turned that around. We turned a small profit. But yeah, we were net negative in 95. Yeah.
And the reality is, for many business owners, that is the truth. They tend to spend more than they should. They don't even know halfway through the year, or especially the month after, depending on how good their bookkeeping and their systems and their processes are to track this, to even know, hey, we got a problem, sound the alarms, we got to do something different. And then the second part of that is what you mentioned. If you don't have breathing room, you look at the number, you go to the bottom. Oh, that sucked. All right, I got to take care of this emergency. Like, wait a second, take a breath. Let's figure this out.
Yeah, especially when you think about a P&L, it's not a future indicator. It's historical. It's over. It's old news. I'm usually looking at my month end numbers somewhere in the first week of the new month. But yeah, it's that's done. So I can't imagine not seeing that data until several weeks or let alone a month later. Because the one nice thing about being small is a small company is agile. You know, you can make moves quickly, and those moves can have impact quickly. So if you see that, hey, where we're trending is down, well, you've got to make some moves.
You got to make some moves. That is correct. And there's a whole bunch. I think this is where people get it wrong. They think the move might be to cut costs. And cost cutting is appropriate when appropriate, but there's a lot of other moves we can make to increase profits besides just the age old thing, oh, you spend too much, cut costs, and doing it other ways. So I think there's a variety of that, which kind of brings up the next problem. As a small company, the biggest thing is it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning is people. How do we attract better people and better talent?
So that is a big problem in certain categories of industries that we support. And I'll call out one specifically, manufacturing, especially in some of what I'll call the specialty manufacturing community. So these are smaller, typically privately held manufacturers. And you've got people that are operators in that business that may have been doing that for 20, 30, in some cases close to 40 years. And what I get nervous about is, I see that person and they've got massive amounts of what I'll call tribal knowledge. They know their operation in and out. They've been doing it forever. They know everything one needs to know to operate and function to a high level of ability. And they're getting close to retirement, and there's nobody, next to them ready to take that seat. And that's scary because when that person finally says, okay, I'm done, who's going to take on that role? So I would say categorically, the manufacturing industry, and I think some of them are starting to get it and wake up to this. And some of our clients we're helping wake up to this is from a brand standpoint, you don't just have to be attractive to prospects, you have to be attractive to talent. And you have to work as hard today to attract great talent as you do to attract great customers. The brand is the brand, right? And that means putting together an equally compelling proposition to somebody that might come and work for that organization that's going to resonate with the emerging generation. And for some companies, that's a heavy lift because you walk in their facility and it looks like the last time it was renovated was 1950. You know,
That is.
and often I'm the bearer of bad news, and I'm like, I'm sorry, there's no 20 something that's going to walk in here and say, yeah, this is cool, this is what I want to do. And the thing that shocks me is some of these companies will pay handsomely. I mean, you can get a really, really good income from some of these roles. Yet, because of how they're perceived, you'll see young people taking, what maybe seems cool, like some social media gig or whatever, for sometimes half the salary that they could make, were they to go down the path of manufacturing. So it's surprising. So they're the manufacturers are willing to invest in the talent and the people, but they just sometimes their brand is holding them back from getting access to that great emerging talent. And let's face it, I don't care what the economy is doing. We're always competing for great talent. Everybody wants to get the best talent they can on their ship.
They do. And I think too often people think that money is the only solution, and it's not. It's actually your culture, your values, the
Mm-hmm.
excitement of being part of that team, which is all part of what a brand truly is in
Yeah.
being part of that. Honestly, the one that I know that's probably the best at that, and they're a big profit fan, profit first fan, is the Savannah Bananas. You talk about a company that has built a brand that you've taken minor league baseball that can compete with major league baseball, and that people like, they sell out tickets like there's like they don't have problems selling tickets, getting employees, making money, like it all happens. But he's built the brand to make it happen, and we cover that in a previous episode with them. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
phenomenal. Which
Yeah.
kind of leads to the next part of it is, how do we stay out of the commodity trap? Because I think that's where everyone ends up if they aren't doing what we're talking about.
Yeah. And that's really the heart of what a lot of the work we do exists, is really positioning that B2B enterprise as something distinct and unique and really the hero of the story in terms of what goods or services they provide. And we're leading with emotion, not function. So the commodity trap happens when many companies say, well, we got to explain what we do and how we do it and all that. And it's like, yeah, okay. But when you're looking to go next level, that's kind of table stakes. Yes, it's given that you're going to turn out quality products and services and do so with some continuity. It's really, what do you stand for? Who are you distinctly, and what is the unique value that you bring as an organization that makes the difference? And that's the tipping point when somebody says, "Yeah, they're the right fit for us." And yeah, to your point, like, a lot of times our clients are going up against much larger competition. So we certainly can't compete head to head with a major, Fortune 500. So how do we? Well, we have to be distinct. We have to show that we're not the biggest solution; we're the best solution. You know, and that's all about brand and really leveraging brand and the value proposition that's distinct and very prospect centric to demonstrate, why our clients are the best option. So that's, yeah, yeah. So a lot of companies, especially in manufacturing, fall into that commodity trap, and we look to turn that on its head and say, no, let's lead with brand, let's lead with emotion, and let the function follow.
And when you're stuck in that commodity trap, the other half of that and the problem is you've got compressed margins.
Mm-hmm.
It's what they call red ocean, right? Everyone's fighting in the ocean and there's blood everywhere
Yeah,
is the shark circle. Whereas when you can get out into blue ocean and you're the only one that people want, all of that stuff goes away. And I think a lot of times small business owners might say, well, I can't do that. I'm too small. And I would challenge it, because I believe there's a lot of people who do what I do, but I believe I'm blue ocean in the sense that I bring all my competitors onto the podcast. Tell us how you do it. Sell your stuff, because I'm not the least bit worried. Either they're going to love me or they're going to love somebody else, and I'm not going to get into the red ocean. I'm not going
yeah.
to play that game. And I know that what we do is unique. We bring high level stuff to the small business owner across a variety of domains. Right before this, I was on another podcast, and we're like, yeah, I we do tax. We don't do tax, but we understand tax. We
Mm-hmm.
understand investments. We understand real estate. We understand business finance. We understand marketing and sales. Are we going to do that for you? No, but we see how it fits into your puzzle. It's not this piece out here that, okay, if that's what they said, we'll believe them. We see how it all comes together for each business owner, because everyone's got to figure it out for them and how
Yeah,
it works.
yeah. And there's different levels in every industry. There's different levels in our industry too, and there's different fits. I was talking to a prospect, and he said, I'm talking with you, and he said, I'm talking with all these other firms, and the firms were doing different forms of marketing services. And I said, you can look at that and you can consider all that, but at the end of the day, we both talked about the fact you have a brand problem. Your brand is not positioned correctly in the market. You're not targeting and approaching prospects in the right way. And you can do all the SEO in the world, but that's not going to fix the brand problem. Until you address that, all these other things will be different forms of band-aids to mask the root issue. So do you want to address it now or later? And so he's like, no, I think we'll address that now. So
Well, you know what? And I think that's the perfect analogy of what we do. I just had to do something yesterday and it got me to thinking, hey, these are my tools, but my tools aren't what make me great. What makes me great is I know when to use this tool or that tool, and I know how to use that tool in a way that's perfect for your situation.
mhm.
Whereas I think too often what we see in the world of business is I have this tool and system and we're going to shove you into it and make it work for you
Yeah,
instead of the opposite way of saying, hey, who are you? And this is back where we started, right? At the first part of this conversation. Who are you? What's your problem? Let me look at my tool chest and see what's the appropriate solution for you and bring that to the table and show you how we can line up all the tools in the appropriate fashion. Because once you've got the branding down, now we can do the SEO, now we can apply the marketing, now we can put the fuel behind it to get it to take off.
yeah, well said. Absolutely.
Any closing advice, business owner to business owner, for our listeners?
I would say, in the coming year, um, there's been a lot of talk. There might be a recession, there might not be. I think the truth is nobody really knows. It's very easy to get caught up in the noise and the panic and the fear. And whenever we see turbulence of any form, um, we always coach our clients, focus on your business. You know, focus on your business. Be mindful. You can be mindful. You can listen and have an ear out, but don't get caught up in the noise or caught up in the panic or the news of the day. Focus on your business, and and that's going to see you through. So I think a lot of times we get distracted by the noise, and that's when I think we really have to bear down and get really focused on where we're going and where we want to be. And are we, to use one of your words, Rocky, putting the tool set together to get us there expeditiously? And
And
yeah,
I think that's one of the things I've learned from Mike and others and experts in my field. What we like to do, I mean, let's face it, we've been talking recession for 4 years now. Okay. So what we literally like to do is say, look, let's create a recession playbook. Let's have it ready. Let's prepare for the recession playbook while you have clear thinking and everything is wonderful and we have cash. And then once we have our recession playbook, let's go ahead and put it on the bookshelf and get back to doing business, knowing that when we get blindsided, we don't have to panic. We go, oh, we have a playbook. Okay. When the boat gets hit, you should have your life preserver under the seat ready for you. And then you put on your life preserver and life goes on. You'll survive for tomorrow. The boat might not, but you'll survive. And we try and do the same thing for business owners. Let's create our life preserver. Let's put it over on the shelf and get back to life. And then if we need to pull it off the shelf, we will. And while everyone else is panicking and freaking out, we're going to start executing. And
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 that's
this is, I mean, you're not a marketing agency, but the biggest thing we talk about with marketing agencies is it's in recessions where you spend money on marketing, because that is when you pick up market share. When everyone else is freaking out and pulling back and not advertising and can't spend, and you have the ability to do so, you take over the world.
I'll tell you one of our I would say the most brands we ever built in a year or repositioned was around 0809. And the the truth is, when you think about it, when do people change? Suppliers, providers, when things are wonderful?
Nope.
No. They change when things are not wonderful. So whenever there's mystery, there's margin. Whenever there's confusion, there's opportunity, especially for the small, mid-sized business community. And that's when they can win share. You know, when everybody else is, the larger entities are shedding headcount and consolidating resources. That's when the small middle market can attack and be aggressive and be bold and win some major new opportunities. So you know, fortune favors the bold. And in periods like that, if you can be aggressive and nimble, you can win. Your story reminded me of a mentor of mine who said many years ago, um, and to put it in context, as a second generation business owner for many years, I was just terrified of sinking the ship. I'm like, oh gosh, because I listened to a consultant years ago, Rocky, and he said early in my career after I'd started the buyout, he said, I think he said like 85% of second generation business owners fail. I was like, oh great, thanks.
90% of first generation fail. So you actually had better odds. No one told you that.
See, I wish I knew that back then. Um, but I was talking to this mentor of mine, and he said, describe for me your darkest day. And I started to talk to him about, what my darkest day would look like. And he said, okay, now that you've defined it, what can you do to prepare for that day? And that's pretty much, what you said before. And that's really became my darkest day or recession playbook. Okay, here's the moves I'd have to make. And then he said, could you do them? And I said, I would have to. He said, absolutely. So, it is healthy to not always dwell in it there, but to have that mindset and that playbook so that you can act when you have to act. Because a lot of times I think businesses, sometimes they fail, but oftentimes they get into, and you've probably seen this, they get into a lot of financial trouble when they are in a state of paralysis, when they've got to make a move, but they can't because they're either afraid or they don't want to, or they're uncertain. So they're just kind of stuck. And, the world doesn't stop because you're stuck. The world keeps going. So, you got to get unstuck.
And that's literally the thing, is to have the playbook. Hey, if we have a cut, this is step one. Okay, if that doesn't work, this is step two, this is step three, and you take action quickly. Mike even talked about that. He's like, if you can't pay the rent, be the first one to call the landlord and go, hey, I'm a little behind. I'll work on it. Let's come up with a new plan. If you're the first guy, he's okay, let's do that. I want to keep getting paid. If you're the 12th guy calling him, he's like, I can't do this anymore. Click. You got to be on top of these things. Be the leader. People survive, right? You just got to have a plan and execute and make it happen.
Absolutely.
If people would like to learn more about you and your company, what's the best way for them to do that?
So they can go to our website, which is delianet, DELIANET.com, or you can always look me up on LinkedIn, and I'm Ed Delia on LinkedIn, and you can find me that way too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Rocky. It was great talking with you today.
Thanks for listening to this unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you'd like to catch the full episode and learn more about what we do, check us out at profitcomesfirst.com. We also go through the Profit First book in each and every chapter in the beginning episodes of the podcast, so check those out as well. Thanks for listening, and here's to you having a more profitable and growing business.